The doctor who saved her life might be the man who broke it 11 years ago. Before we begin, tell me, have you ever kept a secret so heavy it echoed every time someone said your name? Take a breath, because this story starts with one question that changed everything. Before we continue, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from and which part of the story hit you the hardest. I believe this story found you today for a reason. Now, let's get back to the story. The hospital room was too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. Monitors blinked softly beside Linda Stewart, her face pale against the white sheets of Alliance Health Ponca City Hospital. The smell of antiseptic hung in the air, heavy and clinical. By her bedside sat her 11-year-old son, Peter Storm, clutching the sleeve of his hoodie like it was a lifeline. Outside, the Oklahoma rain tapped against the window, soft, steady, relentless. Dr. Eric Storm, still in his scrubs, stood by the door, arms folded. He'd just come from surgery, the one that saved Linda's life after her truck crashed off a bridge outside town. His eyes, sharp and steady, landed on Peter. There was something strange in the way he looked at the boy. Familiar. Linda's eyelids fluttered open. She tried to speak, but the painkillers made her words soft and broken. That's when Peter asked it. "Mom, is Dr. Storm really my dad?" The words dropped into the room like glass shattering on tile. Eric froze. Linda's breath hitched. Even the heart monitor seemed to skip. The truth Linda had buried for 11 years clawed its way back to the surface, the love, the loss, the letter she never sent. Outside the door, nurses passed by with clipboards and coffee cups, completely unaware that inside room 212, a family was unraveling and being reborn all in the same moment. Linda turned her head slowly toward her son, her voice trembling. "We'll talk when I'm stronger." But the look in her eyes said it all. He deserved to know everything. And that's where it began, with a boy's question, a mother's secret, and a doctor who didn't yet know the child sitting beside her was his own. Hours later, while the rain still whispered against the glass, Linda drifted between pain and memory. Somewhere in that fog, the past began to replay the bridge project outside Tulsa, the long nights, the man she once loved but couldn't tell the truth to. The year was 2014. The air smelled like steel and river mud. Linda Stewart stood on the half-built overpass, clipboard in hand, hard hat tilted against the Oklahoma wind. She was 24, smart, precise, and already the youngest civil engineer on site. The crew trusted her calculations more than their own instincts. Every day, she'd drive home coated in dust and pride until he showed up again. Dr. Eric Storm, fresh out of his trauma residency, had volunteered to oversee medical safety at the project after a construction injury. He was confident, too confident, with eyes that saw right through her professional armor. They'd met years before at a hospital charity gala. Back then, he was just a med student with a shy smile. Now, he was fire in a white coat. They fell fast coffee breaks, late-night dinners, his laughter cutting through the sound of drills and machinery. But ambition pulled harder than love. When Eric was offered a surgical position at Alliance Health in Ponca City, he didn't hesitate. He promised to visit, to call. He didn't. Weeks later, Linda found out she was pregnant. She sat in her pickup under the empty bridge, staring at the test. He was gone, his future too bright for a complication like her. So she built a new life, one made of blueprints, baby bottles, and quiet strength. Now, lying in that hospital bed years later, she heard Peter's voice again. "Is Dr. Storm really my dad?" Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones we keep the biggest secrets from. If you've ever wished someone had told you the truth sooner, take a breath and stay with this story. It might just remind you why honesty still matters. A week passed before the color returned to Linda's face. She was sitting up now, reading a weathered magazine when Peter asked if he could grab lunch downstairs. "Go on," she said softly. "Get something real to eat for once." The cafeteria at Alliance Health Ponca City Hospital buzzed with tired families and the smell of burnt coffee. Peter filled a tray with mac and cheese and sat by the window, watching rain stripe the glass. He didn't notice Dr. Eric Storm until the man's reflection appeared beside his own. "Mind if I sit?" Eric asked, tray in hand. Peter shrugged. "Sure. It's a free hospital." Eric smiled. "Technically not, but I'll take it." They talked like strangers at first about vending machine candy and cafeteria food. Then Peter mentioned baseball. "I'm a Royals fan. Mom says that's character building, 'cause they lose a lot." Eric chuckled. "Character building, huh? I used to follow them. Hard not to root for the underdog." Peter's grin widened. "You like them too? No one around here does." For a moment, their laughter filled the sterile room. But when Peter turned his head, the light caught his eyes, gray-green, bright and curious. Eric froze. The color was identical to his own. He brushed it off with a polite goodbye. But the image followed him all day. 2 evenings later, they met again, this time at the Walmart Supercenter. Peter reached for cereal, bumped the shelf, and an avalanche of boxes collapsed at his feet. "Easy there," a familiar voice said, crouching to help. Peter looked up. "You again?" Eric laughed. "Guess we shop in the same chaos." Their hands brushed as they restacked the boxes. For the briefest second, both paused, mirror and reflection, neither speaking, both silently wondering about a truth neither yet dared to name. Outside, thunder rolled across Ponca City. Rain swept across the broad lawns of Marland Mansion, turning the old stone darker with every drop. Inside, Dr. Eric Storm paced his study, the faint crackle of the fireplace echoing against high ceilings and oil portraits that watched in silent judgment. The house, once a symbol of success, now felt like a museum for regrets. He couldn't shake the image of Peter's eyes, that same gray-green shade that stared back at him in every mirror. The thought had followed him from the hospital to the grocery store to this cavernous room where ambition had once lived and warmth had died. He poured himself coffee, ignoring the bourbon this time, and reached for an old box stacked in the corner, one of many he'd never unpacked after moving in. Dust rose as he lifted the lid. Inside were fragments of another life, framed degrees, faded Polaroids, and envelopes bound by a rubber band. One of them stopped him cold. Linda S., 2014. His breath caught. He tore it open carefully, the paper fragile with time. The handwriting was unmistakable, clean, deliberate, a little shaky at the edges. "Eric, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I'm not writing for forgiveness, only to tell you that something of us remains more than I ever planned. You once told me your work would change lives. I just hope you'll remember the one you already changed." The letter ended without a signature, the postmark never stamped. Eric sank into his chair, the words blurring as realization hit. Linda hadn't left because she stopped loving him. She'd left because she was protecting something, someone. For 11 years, the truth had been sitting here, sealed in a box at the heart of his mansion, waiting for him to find it when he was finally ready to face himself. The hospital was quieter at night, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the rhythmic beep of distant monitors. Dr. Eric Storm stood outside room 212, his reflection fractured in the glass. In his coat pocket, the letter trembled slightly from the shake of his hand. He stepped inside. Linda stirred, blinking awake under the dim glow of the bedside lamp. "Eric," she whispered, voice thin but steady, "you shouldn't be here this late." He tried to smile, but it came out strained. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd check in on my most stubborn patient." She gave a small laugh, then coughed. Still trying to fix what's already broken? I found something, he said quietly. A letter. Your handwriting. Dated 2014. Her face went pale. You weren't supposed to! I think I was, he said, pulling the folded paper from his pocket. You had a right to tell me, Linda. Tears filled her eyes. You had a right to know, she corrected, her voice breaking. But I was terrified. You were building a future, and I didn't want to be the reason it fell apart. He shook his head slowly. No, I had a responsibility I never got to keep. To you, to him. Silence hung heavy between them, years of missed chances pressing in. In the hallway, Peter stood frozen, clutching his baseball cap against his chest. He could only hear fragments, his mom crying, Dr. Storm's voice shaking. The truth, once hidden, was unraveling on the other side of that door. Eric stepped closer, eyes soft but fierce. You should have trusted me. Linda met his gaze through tears. And you should have stayed. When someone finally faces the truth they've avoided for years, hearts break, but sometimes that's how healing begins. If stories like this remind you of forgiveness you still owe someone, don't look away. Let this one keep you company. Morning light slipped through the blinds of room 212, soft but unkind. The air between Linda and Eric was heavy with what couldn't be unsaid. She turned her face to the wall as he stood by her chart, his tone careful, his jaw tight. I've already sent a sample, Eric said quietly. From you, from him, from me. Linda's eyes snapped open. You had no right. I had every right, he said, voice rising then softening. I just need to know, Linda. I can't keep wondering every time that boy looks at me. Her hands trembled in her lap. And if it's true, what then? You'll make room in your perfect life for a son you never planned? Eric's silence said everything. Hours later, Peter wandered past the nurse's station, pretending to look for snacks. His curiosity had been gnawing at him for days, the hushed tones, the half-finished sentences when he entered the room. He waited until no one was watching, then leaned over the computer screen. There, under a tab marked Confidential Results, he saw it his own name, Peter Storm. The words blurred, but the next line was clear enough. Paternal match confirmed. His stomach twisted. He didn't understand everything, but he understood enough. That afternoon, a nurse slipped a sealed envelope into Linda's hand. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. Tears fell before the paper tore. But before she could tell Eric, 2 uniformed officers entered the room. Miss Stewart, one said, we've completed our inspection of your vehicle. Linda blinked, confused. The officer nodded grimly. Your brake lines were cut. This wasn't an accident. The room spun. Eric stepped forward, his face turning white. In that instant, the truth of Peter's bloodline became secondary to a darker one. Someone had tried to end her life. The parking lot of Alliance Health Ponca City Hospital glowed orange under flickering sodium lights. The rain had stopped, but the air still hummed with the kind of electricity that comes before something breaks. Doctor, Eric Storm stood beside his car, fists clenched, jaw tight. Across from him, Richard Calloway leaned against a pickup, cigarette trembling between his fingers. You cut her brakes, Eric said, voice low, dangerous. Tell me I'm wrong. Richard laughed bitterly, eyes glassy. You think you're some kind of hero, Storm. She was never supposed to call you again. You already had everything, the mansion, the title, the perfect life. I had nothing without her, Eric snapped, stepping closer. You nearly killed her. You could have killed my son. Richard froze. You're... what? Eric's chest heaved, the words tasting strange and right all at once. My son, Peter. He's mine, Richard. Mine. For a moment, The only sound was the soft hiss of the rain returning. Richard's face crumpled under the truth. "I just wanted her to see me," he whispered. "She wouldn't even look my way after you came back into town." Eric's voice was a blade now. "So you tried to destroy her life to get her attention?" The sirens grew louder, blue and red lights cutting through the night. Officers swarmed the lot, guns drawn but cautious. Richard dropped to his knees, sobbing, hands in the air. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," he cried. From her hospital window above, Linda Stewart watched the scene blur through tears and pain. The morphine dulled her body, but not her heart. Down below, Eric stood unmoving as Richard was cuffed. His breath fogged in the cool night air, not from anger, but from something deeper. He wasn't just fighting for justice anymore. He was fighting for the family he almost lost before he even knew it was his. 3 weeks later, the day finally came when Alliance Health Ponca City Hospital released Linda Stewart. Her head still ached, but her spirit was steady. The danger had passed, and the truth painful. Cleansing was finally out. "Doctor," Eric Storm waited outside with his truck. Engine running, sleeves rolled up like he was starting a new life rather than ending a chapter. "Come stay at Marlin Mansion for a while," he said. "You both need rest, and I could use the company." Linda hesitated, glancing at Peter, whose hopeful grin made the choice for her. "All right," she said softly, "but just until I'm back on my feet." Marlin Mansion looked different in daylight, less like a monument and more like a home waiting to be filled. Peter ran through the grand halls, his sneakers echoing off marble floors. He stopped at the tall portraits of Oklahoma oil tycoons, eyes wide. "Do all these people belong to you?" he asked. Eric laughed. "Nobody. They just came with the house." Later, by the backyard pond where the water shimmered beneath the golden sky, Eric knelt beside Peter with a small bag of duck feed. They tossed handfuls into the water, watching ripples spread outward. Peter looked up shyly. "Do I call you Dr. Storm or Dad now?" Eric's throat tightened. He smiled through it. "How about just Dad?" The word hung in the warm Oklahoma air like a promise. From the porch, Linda watched them, two silhouettes against the fading sun, father and son finding rhythm in quiet simplicity. For the first time in years, peace didn't feel like a dream she'd misplaced. It was right there, in laughter, in light, in second chances. And as the ducks drifted toward the far shore, the family that almost never was began, at last, to truly be. A month had passed since Linda Stewart left the hospital, and the rhythm of life at Marlin Mansion had shifted into something almost peaceful. The grand estate no longer felt hollow. It echoed now with laughter, with the smell of home-cooked dinners, with the sound of Peter's sneakers racing across hardwood floors. They had moved into the guest cottage tucked behind the main house, cozy, sunlit, and alive with the sound of cicadas in the evenings. From her window, Linda could see the pond where Eric and Peter still fed the ducks every morning, their easy laughter rolling across the lawn like a song. That evening, the Oklahoma sky turned lavender and gold, clouds gathering on the horizon with the quiet threat of summer thunder. Linda was in the garden, hands deep in soil, when Dr. Eric Storm appeared behind her. His shirt sleeves were rolled, his expression softer than she'd ever seen it. "I lost you once because I didn't listen," he said, voice low, trembling with memory. "I'm not making that mistake again." She turned, eyes glistening in the fading light. "Then don't," she whispered. For a heartbeat, neither moved the air thick with all the words they'd never said. Then he stepped forward, and she met him halfway. His hands found hers, still dusted with earth, and their foreheads pressed together as thunder rumbled faintly in the distance. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was better, honest, human, fragile, and full of second chances. The storm rolled closer, a soft promise of renewal, washing away the silence that had lived between them for too long. Some stories don't end with grand gestures, they end with forgiveness whispered under an Oklahoma sky. If this one reached you, stay a while. Maybe the next story will too. If you love this story, don't just scroll away, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from and which part of the story hit you the hardest. We've got more powerful, emotional stories coming your way, and trust me, you don't want to miss them.